Shanti Gopanyutopshu. Let's do the 4 limitless contemplations. May all beings have happiness and create the causes. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semjen damje dewatang dewe jutang den paju jik dungal tang dungal jutang drawaju tik dungal mepe dewa tampatang minra waju tik nering chaktang nitang drawe tangung chempo lane paju chik. So, good morning, everybody. Those who have just come, nice to see you all. And we're going to do the second part today of When the Chips Are Down. That's the name. And we're going to do the second part. And I've got a lot of teaching that I want to give you. But the problem is that next week is a holiday. It's the high Jewish holidays. I definitely can't have a group on that day, even though for me personally, it doesn't really matter that much, but it does matter to my household. So I can't do it. I can't do it on next Monday. And someone said the following Mondays are public holidays. That's true. Anyway, let's go from next Monday. I don't know. As far as I know, we'll come back in 2 weeks' time. So that's why I'd like to.
No, isn't next Monday Heritage Day on the 24th, on the 25th? I think it's Heritage Day, so it's a public holiday for everybody.
It's this Monday. It's this Monday.
This coming Monday when the high holidays are as well.
Yes, yes, it's on the 25th of September.
Okay, so next week we don't have one, and the week after we go back. Okay, and then that's fine. I hope that works nice. So I want to complete this When the Chips Are Down, if we can. I don't want to rush because I like you to discuss with me as well. But I want to, this part 2 is very important because I think this is a really important subject. And I do want you to say whatever you need to say at all times so that you can butt in because it must apply to you. So I'm starting off with a story like this. An aging master grew tired of his apprentice's complaints. One morning, he sent him to get some salt. When the apprentice returned, the master told him to mix a handful of salt in a glass of water and then drink it. How does it taste? The master asked. Bitter, said the apprentice. The master chuckled and then asked the young man to take the same handful of salt and put it in the lake. The two walked in silence to the nearby lake, and once the apprentice swirled his handful of salt in the water, the old man said, "Now drink from the lake." As the water dripped down the man's chin, the master asked, "How does it taste?" "Fresh," remarked the apprentice. "Do you taste the salt?" asked the master. "No," said the young man. At this, the master sat beside the serious young man and explained softly, "The pain of life is pure salt, no more, no less. The amount of pain in life remains exactly the same. However, the amount of bitterness we taste depends on the container that we put our pain in. So when you are in pain, the only thing you could do is to enlarge your sense of things. Stop being a glass and become a lake." Okay, so that's quite an important advice because we often aren't. When we're in bad state, we're not exactly broad-minded and have a big view. And then the other thing I want to read you is, I don't know if you remember when Mingyur Dorje was on retreat, for that long retreat when he was wandering in the Himalayas and everything, was an amazing time for him, and he really just went off one day, left all his disciples, left his monastery and everything, and just went off. And his assistant and friend saw him one day when he was in retreat, and he was on his way to Dolpo, another thing, and this assistant spotted him, and of course ran up to him. And at that time, Rinpoche was staying in a rundown hotel, had very little food or clothing. The sleeping bag and jacket that you see in the pictures, because he took pictures, were given to him by Lamatashi. But at this point in time, we don't know where, that later in the retreat, we don't know where he is, when he'll be out of retreat. But judging by this letter, he's healthy and thoroughly enjoying the life of a wandering yogi. Okay. So this was his letter that he wrote, and I think it really is relevant to our subject and everything. He said like this: "To my dear mother, relatives, monastic community, students, and all those with whom I share a connection, due to the blessing of the gurus, I'm in health, good health, and not experiencing obstacles. At present, I'm wandering around, no fixed location, from place to place, and I met Lamatashi, and he earnestly asked me to accompany him, and he gave me food, clothing, and other necessities, and relayed to me both good and bad news, which left me feeling a mixture of happiness and sadness. He said, I myself am wandering without any fixed location, staying in isolated mountain hermitages and other places. I have experienced feelings of happiness and suffering, rising and falling like waves on the surface of the ocean. At times, food and clothing have been hard to come by, and I felt hungry and thirsty and cold. Even when I begged for alms, I received nothing but insult and harsh words. At other times, I've received food and clothing effortlessly without even asking for them. And in my mind, it felt as though I was enjoying the pleasure of the gods. While I've experienced both happiness and suffering, the most important thing is that a deep and heartfelt sense of certainty has arisen in my being, such that no matter what happens, I know that the true nature of these experiences, their very essence, is that of timeless awareness and vast compassion. In other words, that all these experiences are emptiness. There's nothing solid in them. He says, this natural clarity of awareness has been with us from the very beginning. It's the very essence and the true nature of our minds. Day and night, it is always present. Therefore, one must maintain the flow of pure awareness to the best of one's ability without meditating, yet not getting lost in distraction. Great love and compassion are also the innate qualities of our being. All the thoughts, destructive emotion, and suffering we encounter are in essence completely permeated with vast compassion. And so, as a sign of this, we naturally wish to enjoy happiness and be free of suffering. He says, but it's not always apparent. He says, beings don't want that because basically they have not recognized what they already have. Thus, aside from merely recognizing our own nature, there isn't the slightest thing to meditate on. Recognizing the importance of this, I've passed my days feeling joyful and content, wandering through the mountains and valleys and staying here and there, and I sincerely encourage you to practice diligently in this manner as well. And I thought that letter that he wrote, even though it's from quite a long time ago, I just remember when he came out of retreat and he went to Taisitu Rinpoche, whom he really respected, and there was a video of the two of them together. It was I cried when I saw this video. You could try and check it out if you could find it somewhere on YouTube, but it was a video in which this beautiful being with his hair, long hair, and he was always a monk, blowing, meeting with him with this face that was absolutely alive and alight. And I remember thinking to myself, this is so beautiful. And yet he's been through a lot of suffering on this retreat, but he wanted to do that. And I thought to myself, you know, if only we could see our suffering, and when the chips are down, if only we could see this through different eyes and really understand this is the best thing that has happened to us. And I thought to myself, I went to a course of his once at Sammy Ling, and I liked it. Of course, he's a brilliant master. He's an enlightened being, and he went on this retreat. But what I saw in that video was not what I heard when I went to the retreat. When I went to his retreat, he was teaching, he was busy, he was, his answers were, and here, when I watched him, there was a humility that came over him. Now, isn't that what we've got to attain no matter what we're doing in life? That kind of humility that I'm in the right place at the right time, and I will do the best I can, but I see that this is the best for me. And last little story about Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, who discovered the light bulb, his laboratory was virtually destroyed by fire in December 1914. Although the damage exceeded $2 million, the buildings were only insured for $238,000 because they were made of concrete and thought to be fireproof. Much of Edison's life work went up in spectacular flames that December night. At the height of the fire, Edison's 24-year-old son, Charles, frantically searched for his father among the smoke and debris. He finally found him, calmly watching the scene, his face glowing in the reflection, his white hair blowing in the wind. My heart ached for him, said Charles. He was 67. I laughed because in those days, 67 was a really old man. But today, you're a youngster if you're 67, okay? No longer a young man. Well, that's how it was in those days. Don't forget it. And everything was going up in flames. When he saw me, he shouted, Charles, where's your mother? When I told him I didn't know, he said, find her, bring her here. She will never see anything like this as long as she lives. The next morning, Edison looked at the ruins and said, there's great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burnt up as well. Thank God we could start anew. 3 weeks after the fire, Edison managed to deliver his first phonograph, which is a very interesting story. And I think about myself, and we've got to get out of our house. It's really time for us to get out of our house. And I've got to pack up all my stuff. There is so much, so many prayers, so many things, so many sheets of paper, so many lectures, so many pictures, so many everything. I mean, over a long career, there's so much. And I kind of feel the same as him. I feel maybe it should just burn up and I should just go in my heart and find whatever it is that's left. Because how do you really get rid of all your attachment to everything? In case I need to give a talk on this, in case I need to give a talk on this, in case this, maybe I've already got it inside me. Just what Yonge Rinpoche said. And so looking back at last week, and I don't want to spend a long time rephrasing and summarizing. So if you weren't here, then just go back and get it. But I think most of you were here. We are using James Lowe's text on Being Guru Rinpoche. Such a beautiful book. The more I see it, the more I value it so much. Okay, it's a red book. We can't do this practice because I don't think we'll find a lama that could give us a empowerment for that practice. But you know what I've discovered? That sometimes when I'm not doing a practice, I learn a lot just from reading the English of that practice, and I can bring it into my lectures because there's so much to learn and so much to do. And I think to myself, well, it doesn't matter, I can really learn something. And his commentaries on the whole sadhana are absolutely incredible, as I told you. And he really teaches us how to be in samsara while not attaching to the temporary identity of our human selves. That's our biggest problem. If you write any notes at all from me, just write, do not attach to our temporary human identity. That's all. And we were speaking last week about all the situations we get into when the chips are down and how the negative emotions run rampant and then they become habitual and then their deep imprints. And then we enter the 6 realms of samsara, one or a few at right times. But as I said last week, one different thought, that you are your Buddha inside you, you are an awakened being, and you're out of the realms. That's the beautiful thing, because we're not searching somewhere else. It's all here. So it's a question of moving out all the garbage, and the pearl is right there inside us. And what I wanted to say was to remember that each of the 6 realms of samsara is presided over by a Buddha. So if you look in the 100 deity practice, you'll find those 6 Buddhas standing up on the side on lotus. They're not sitting, they're standing. They have to be standing for us, okay, caught in the realms. And those 6 Buddhas over there mean Buddha Shakyamuni over the human realm, because we had him here, and each one over each realm is there. And what that means is, it means if a Buddha is presiding over a realm, it means that realm is pure, 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 pure. It's just our perception that sees it in an impure way. So we need to train in the perception. And in Tulku Urgent's book, in his book, Dzogchen Deity Practice, there is an amazing prayer there. And I do that very often. I also don't do the whole sadhana of the 100 deities, but I just photographed it today because I wanted to tell you about it, because I think it's really important. And what this little practice is that if you look at the 6 realms of samsara, it's the 6 chakras in your body. One's on top of your head, one's in the throat. So on top of the head is the God realm. The over here is the jealous God realm. In your heart chakra is the human realm. In your navel chakra is the human animal realm. In the secret place down here is the hungry ghost realm, and under your feet is the hell realms. So if you look at that, each one is a different chakra. And in this practice, what you do is you use the syllables ram, yam, kam, and you clean out each of those chakras, each of the possibilities of being attached to a realm. And I found that very useful, because even if I'm not cleaning them out, in actual fact, I find, it goes ram saparana pe, yam saparana pe, kam saparana pe. Then it goes da sara naraka. Naraka is the hell realm. So you visualize that these winds are that these cleansing is taking it all out of each of the chakras. So in that way, you can stop yourself. If you're in depression, if you're in anger all the time, if you found that you go back to all these things, it's a beautiful way. You can just make up your own by knowing which of the chakras belongs to the realms. I thought I'd just add that because it's helpful, for everybody, that you're changing it out of everything. For me, it's just a reminder of those, because if you write them down and you associate the different emotions in each of them, then you know where your trap is. And then from the 6 realms, you're not going to get yourself attached to the 6 realms because you're aware, just because you're aware. So therefore, when you come into a situation, you're not just going to respond in your usual old way with your anger, with your depression, with your everything, because you're going to say to yourself, hey, I'm different. I've got something different to offer. And by knowing that, you're already out of the realm. And so we've got to we've got to turn our perception into pure perception. And what does this mean? How do we turn it into pure perception? Number one, by practice. Okay, there's no doubt in my mind. Practice is the raft that takes you across the river. And practice is very important, especially Vajrayana practice. You know, the more I listen to all these masters talking about the incredible privilege of having Vajrayana practice in this time, because when Maitreya comes, there'll be no Vajrayana practice anymore. So it's a real privilege that Guru Rinpoche came and gave us. In brief, why is it such a privilege? Because if you look deeply at it and you stop attaching to the fact that I'm doing Chenrezi, this is my guru, this is my practice, this is what I'm doing, these are my mantras that I'm doing, etc. If you just look deeply, as Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche says, doing the practice of one deity is doing the practice of all deities, okay, because they're all inside you, not outside you. And when you look at it, it is the answer, because it says the essence, and out of the emptiness comes the creation, the forming of the deity. And then you use the mantra. Now, this week, I've got to say that I'm going to do Vajra speech tomorrow night. I know the poor Australians can definitely not come. But, you know, I haven't really taught deeply on this subject. And it's the most phenomenal subject. Every day I've been given something else in Vajra speech. And the mantra recitation is the most unbelievable tool that we have, the electricity that we have, to be able to go from the deity, use the mantra practice to both for ourselves and all sentient beings, and then dissolve back into the emptiness. And that alone really, what's that noise? It's drilling somewhere here. That alone is so vital, because if we understand that when the chips are down, that this has come out of emptiness, therefore whatever it is I'm going through is not solid, not permanent, not me. I have got a thing to get over it. When we do that, then we see that we can create something completely different and then dissolve back into emptiness. This is such an amazing way to learn how to train in pure perception. And also, of course, by studying, meditating, being aware, just letting your mind be in the Dharma. It's really, really important, because for me, what's happened for me, like I wanted to do this talk on Vajra speech, and I had some stuff, but not a lot. You will not believe what happened to me. Because of my desire to make it into a beautiful picture, so Guru Rinpoche puts into my hands things that I need. I couldn't believe it. I was cleaning out my drawers. There was a thick wad of notes, and it just opened up, and there was the speech I needed, the actual thing, you know. I thought, I don't believe this. I was going to throw the whole lot in the bin, and there was what I needed, you know. It just happens when you're in the right state of your true self, that everything falls into place. Because I really wanted to do a beautiful teaching on Vajra speech, because I think we do mind and we do body, but we don't do very much on speech and energy. And so I really want to. So even if you can't come at night, see that you get the copy of the talk so that you can use it and really see how that is. So before I go on to James Lowe's thing, maybe somebody needs to say something, wants to say something about anything that I've said, or ask a question with pleasure, whatever you want, just open. It's open up to you. Anything that's troubling you about all of this, or anything you're not understanding, or anything you want to add to, I'm very, very happy to have it.
Mel,
please.
I wanted to say something. The way I sort of assessed everything is, if you don't come to terms and deal with your demons, while you're in this life, you're going to have a terrible death. Because if you can't sort of like see your way clear, like as you say, everything is just, it's not forever. It's just a moment in time, and things will get past, and you got to change your mindset. Otherwise, you're in deep, deep trouble.
I absolutely agree with you. And the thing is, you have the chance, and what people don't realize is when the chips are down and you're going through the worst of things, and the demon is right in front of you, okay? When the demon is right in front of you, that's your lesson. You should celebrate that that demon is in front of you. That's your lesson. You're getting the chance. So often people say to me, but why, Melanie? Why does this go on and on and on? I just can't. I'm trying so hard and I can't come to terms with it. And when they do that, I say, wrong. You need to see that the fact that this is repetitive is so important. The repeated things that happen in your life mean that you're getting the privilege of really seeing what it means. And it's amazing. And really confronting those demons. And we'll go back later to the 4 demons again, the main demons, and what the demons really are. I'll do it over and over again, but it's so important because those demons, those negative qualities have got to be looked at and challenged from a different view, you know. So talking about that, I want to start with James Lowe. His beautiful, let me get the page. His beautiful says the 4 aspects of practice, which is really important. The view, the meditation, the activity, and the result, those 4 aspects. And he starts with the view, and he says in the view, your own nature from the very beginning is infinite emptiness without any limitations, not dependent on anything at all. He said the view in Tibetan, tawa, I think it's tawa, means to see. And it means this is how to experience. You need to get used to this new kind of experience to both maintain it and relax into it. Now, his whole thing is about relaxing. The minute we're in a lousy situation, we tense. Isn't that true? The minute we're in a lousy situation, we tense up. As soon as you tense up, your Buddha mind can't come through. So when we're in the chips are down, we should say, now is the time I need to relax. The Vajrayana, the tantric practice is to really relax us. So you get used to this new kind of experience. You can't. When you're on tenterhooks, what's going to happen? You know, I could see in so many things, like we've got to get out of our house. I don't know where we're going, what we're doing. Everything's open-ended. So I question my husband all the time. And he says to me, he's not the Buddhist I am. What are you questioning me about? He said, just let it happen. Then I go, if I kind of know a little bit of where I'm going, then I'll feel much better. Then at least I know what I'm doing. And he looks at me and shakes his head, and he's absolutely right. Because my most important thing is for me to be in touch with my awakened nature. When I'm in touch with my awakened nature, wherever I go, it'll be to give service. And once I'm going to give service, then I'm in the right place. Doesn't matter if it's there, if it's in a flat, if it's in another country, if it's anywhere, doesn't really matter. The most important thing is the relaxation, the being there, like Minja Dorje said. And then the second one is the meditation. And I gave you a little bit of it last week, is to shift your view. The meditation to shift your view. The meditation should be clear like the sun, free of clouds. Okay, clouds. What are the clouds? He said he uses this word assumptions a lot. Assumptions. We make so many assumptions. You know how many times we say to people, no, it's not like that about me. That's not what I feel. No, it isn't like that. Because someone's made an assumption of you and you've made an assumption of someone else. Now the clouds are our assumptions, what we assume to be in the world, which is changing every minute. Our assumptions, our karmic habits, our impulses, our personal history. Well, out of these, we create some notion of who we are. This is what my mother said I should be. This is what my mother didn't say I should be. This is what my history did. This is what my assumption about life is about. You need to be wealthy. You need to have things. You need to adapt. These are my assumptions. He said, that's who we think we are. Mistake number one. He said, there's more clouds than sun when we're meditating, and we try to lift the clouds off so that clarity is there, and then the view can manifest through us. So as you're sitting and your assumptions come in, what this person said to me, where am I going? What happened to me this morning? What happened to my business? What happened to this? What happened to that? All of these things are there, and we take them to be a thing that we fixate on. And here in the meditation, we're just letting go of all the balloons and letting everything just come to where it is. You're in the right place at the right time. And he says, tantric meditation, in other words, doing the deity practice, is to understand the structure of how we got lost. Isn't that interesting? When you're doing the deity practice, you begin to understand how you got lost. Because I often say to myself millions of times, how would Tara react in this situation? How would Guru Rinpoche react in this situation? And I know they would react differently to me. And now I'm able to say that right at the moment and then let go of what I was doing. I really found that, especially in intimate relationships, things that I would have gone on and on and on about, I drop right then and there, because I could see them. I could see what Guru Rinpoche would do or use in that situation. And that's us being Guru Rinpoche. And the conduct, which is the third aspect of practice, everything you do when you're not meditating. And so we have to ask, how should a Buddha behave? How do we see a Buddha? I don't mind if you don't use the word Buddha. How would an enlightened master behave? How would they react in this situation? Are the marks, they have hierarchy or power? Look at what the Guru does. I always told you when I used to say to Lama Yeshe, how are you even now? He goes, if my mind is good, then I am good. Doesn't matter what you've got to go through. You have to be very big to do that, you know, instead of saying, oh, I can't walk with my limbs, and oh, I can't do this, and oh, I can't do that. And then finally, the fourth aspect, so view, meditation, conduct, and the fourth aspect is the fruition, the result. And Buddhahood is to recognize, says James Lowe, the nature of your own ground, your own basis. Everything comes out of the essence. Everything comes out of the Dharma Dhatu. And in that, all the faults and the limitations are self-liberated. Everything was always pure from the beginning, but we can't see that. And so it was always pure. If we don't know what other people's realization is, we should treat everybody as though they were a Buddha. And then with infinite respect, with validation and belief in their potential and in their possibility. And I found that I do that very, very often. I really look at people when they're giving me their absolute opinion, which I'm really ready to say that's such garbage. Okay, and then I stop and I say, that's their assumption. That's how they feel. Maybe I shouldn't judge them like that because this is where they're coming from. These are their clouds, and that's how they see their view. You can't change that for people. And he says, the preparatory, the nondra, the preparatory practice, in future times, he says, life will be very difficult for beings. And Guru Rinpoche has said this. He said they will easily succumb to distraction. They'll have no time to do any practice, and the 5 poisons will be rampant. And that's why he says we should do the nondro. The 4 mind changes in the text, a strong sense from the mind changes that samsara is a dangerous and difficult place. And we seek to avoid reality because it's so painful. And he says the aspect of the cause of suffering is not recognizing the 3 marks of conditioned existence. This is conditioned existence. This depends on that, depends on that, depends on that. What are the 3 marks? Write this down so that you can really contemplate them. The 3 marks of conditioned existence are: impermanence is the first one. Impermanence. The second one is the absence of an inherent self-nature, so that nothing stands on its own the way we see it. It's as a result of this, as a result of this, as a result of this. Doesn't stand on its own. And when we see that nothing is on its own except your awakened nature, that stands on its own, but nothing else does. When we understand that, the absence of an inherent self-nature, and the third mark of conditioned existence is suffering. Because we can't see the truth, we're really, really suffering. Because everything's impermanent, we're suffering. But how about when we change the view and we say, because it's impermanent, I may not have to suffer. Maybe I could see a different view because it's soon going to be over. So we could use impermanent. People don't. As soon as they lose what they had because of impermanence, they're devastated. They can't move anymore. Think about it. It's so difficult. He says, shifting one's own. He says, suffering arises because things are impermanent. They're impermanent because they have no inherent self-nature. The thought of impermanence and death, he says, is like flushing the toilet. Flushing the toilet, because it's not going to last. So you don't need to get so involved in it. You do what you have to do, but you don't have to be fixated in it, thinking about it morning, noon, and night, clutching onto it, holding it. Do you all understand that? It's so important when the chips are down, when you're feeling lousy, when you're suffering from this or suffering from that, or you're ill, or whatever the case is, you've got to really see that it's just impermanent. But you've also got to see that when it's a wonderful time and you're also happy and you're also delighted, it's also impermanent, And then when it ends, people go, if only I could just have 2 more days of this holiday, 1 more day of this holiday. It was such fun. I loved being with you. It was divine, If only I could stay with my children. When I say goodbye to all those little ones, and they're so cute, and by the time you come back, they're already fully changed human beings. And I go, oh, I'd like a little more time with them. It's impermanent. Good and bad is impermanent. It's not going to last. And that's why we need to do those 4 mind changes, the preciousness of human birth, impermanence, karma, and putting your head on the block of the executioner, because we keep going back to the same old stuff. I think what he says is so amazing, because then he says, when we take refuge, but if you look at refuge, most external people, I must just tell you that when I'm listening to tapes and I'm listening to Zongsa Khyentse Rinpoche giving a lecture to the Japanese, giving a lecture to the Singaporeans, giving a lecture to Asians. Then he comes and gives a lecture to the Canadians or the Americans. I just have such a chuckle, because when these Asians come forward, they go, "Oh, Rinpoche, thank you very much for being here. Would it be okay if I ask this or this or this, you know?" And when the Canadians come up, they go, "Rinpoche, I'm going to challenge you on this particular thing." And this is what I feel. One got up and said, "I've got the stone, Rinpoche, and it's a wish-fulfilling jewel, and all you have to do is this, this, and this." And I just laugh, because I look at our cultures, you know, we're so different. And I love that Asian culture where they bow for everything. I must have been an Asian for a long time. I really respect it. It's beautiful. And I just want to say that, you know, when you look at it, taking refuge, you can take external refuge. That helps with your security in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. Or you can start taking internal refuge of the Guru, the Yidam, and the Dakini, which is all happening inside you. Or you can take secret refuge, which is in the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya, which is inside you, which has your Buddha nature, which is the essence, the nature, and the manifestation that we've been talking about in Vajrayana. So if you take refuge in your real innermost self, it covers all the others. You're secure. You've got a safety mechanism. You've got an insurance company. You've got all of those kind of things when you take refuge on a really deep inner level. And he says, when you take refuge in the Buddha, when you take refuge in Vajrasattva or Dorji Sempa, when you do the 100-syllable mantra, he says, you are that Vajrasattva. In fact, there's a mantra that I often do from Tulku Urgent, goes like this. Very interesting. It goes, "This ordinary body of momentary delusion is a primordial, pure body of light. In a state of brightness, I visualize distinct and perfect the naturally present Vajrasattva. Vajrasattva Ah." Isn't that a beautiful mantra? So what you're doing is, when you're doing that refuge, when you look in the mirror, you see who you are. I try not to look at the wrinkles and all of that, and I try to see myself as Tara or see myself as Guru Rinpoche, but it's really difficult for us because it's all internal. And James Lowe says, the anorexic girl stands in front of the mirror and she's a stick and she says, "Look how fat I am." I mean, isn't it ridiculous? Who do we see when we look in the mirror? He says, what we got to see is when we enter the theater of the Vajrayana, the theater, and he gives such beautiful example. Our drama of being Melanie is disturbed by entering the drama of being Vajrasattva. Don't you think that's a wonderful idea? Our drama of being Nicola, Jade, Gail, whatever, is interrupted because now we are Vajrasattva, now we are somebody else. And he gives the most wonderful examples. He gives the story of Hamlet. He says, you have to enter into this new role. It takes you out of your human body and into the role of the deity, which is also temporary because it's going to dissolve. But now you see yourself in a completely different way. You're abandoning Melanie to be Vajrasattva. You're abandoning Melanie to be Green Tara. Green Tara is speedy. She's beautiful. She can accomplish everything that she wants to do. What do you think about being her? He gives this whole thing, which I gave the other night to people, that it's so important because it's recognizing this role and doing away with your assumptions. Your assumptions of, I'm an ugly, fat, old girl. You know, that's who I am. I'm not worth anything. I don't know what she knows. I know that I'm absolutely pathetic. Those are your assumptions. How can you be pathetic, even if you're acting in a play where you are the pathetic person in your role, that everybody's shouting at you that you're not getting things done as they should? It doesn't matter, because that's a temporary, transient role, and we've got to stop criticizing ourselves. I said to somebody the other day, please stop criticizing yourself. And this woman said to me, but I hate myself. I hate what I am. I look at everybody else. I think they're all doing well, and I'm doing so badly, and I can't help criticizing myself. I said, then deal with the inner critic. Take the inner critic and look at the inner critic. What is it that you want? When your voice inside me says, you're so pathetic, you can't do anything, you'll never manage, you all this, everybody else does it so well, you do it so badly. I said, talk to that critic, that inner critic, and ask that inner critic, what do you want from me? And the inner critic will tell you, I'm really scared of success. I'm really scared of being left behind. So I criticize you to hold you back. And I'll say to the critic, but that's not helping either of us. Maybe if you could encourage me, we could feel better about everything. Do you all understand what I'm saying? Maybe if you assumed a different role in a critic, then I would be fine. Maybe if you stopped criticizing me and said, come on, you can go, you can do it. Everything in our lives is based on assumptions and concepts. You know, James Lowe gives the example of a room. He says, we're sitting in a room. So you say, of course we're sitting in a room, but my dog is lying there and he's also in the same room. But he doesn't have the concept of a room. He doesn't know that this is a room. And so what is this room? This room is made of cement, bricks, glass, whatever else you want to call it. But I've called it a room because that's my assumption. And maybe, you know, maybe we shouldn't have so many assumptions, so many organized things, so many controlling to be safe, which actually makes us anxious in the end. And James Lowe says, we need the opposite of anxiety. We need to relax, total relaxation, trust and faith and relaxation to return to our true selves. Now, especially when you're going through a difficult time, and lots of people are going through difficult times at the moment. It's so important, this. Can you all understand? I mean, there's so much more, and I'm going off the point a few times and giving you more, but I just think that, you know, we're so attached to everything, and we can't drop it. We can't drop it in any way. And the beautiful story, let me find it here if I can. The beautiful story of the monk, I'm sure you've all heard of this story. Hang on a moment, I've got to find it. You've all heard of the story of the monk, which goes like this, the two monks. I'm sure you've all heard the story. Two monks were returning to the monastery in the evening. It had rained and there were puddles of water on the roadside. At one place, a beautiful young woman was standing, unable to walk across because of a big puddle of water. The elder of the monks went up, lifted her in his arms, and carried her over and left her on the other side of the road, and then went on walking towards his monastery. In the evening, the younger monk came to the elder monk and said, "Sir, as monks, we are not allowed to touch women." So the monk says, "Yes, brother." Then the younger monk asks, "But then, sir, how is it that you lifted that woman by that woman on the roadside and carried her across?" The elder monk smiled at him and said, and told him, "I left her on the side of the road but you are still carrying her. Okay. Think about that story. It's a beautiful story because it really, really is. We have to change our identity. So just to give you a little bit of laughter, someone sent me long ago this thing on senior moments. And the one story, I killed myself laughing, just to make you laugh now. When the husband finally died, his wife put the usual death notice in the paper, but added that he died of gonorrhea. No sooner when the papers delivered, when a good friend of the family phoned and complained bitterly, "You know very well that he died of diarrhea, not gonorrhea," replied the widow. "I nursed him day and night, so of course I know he died of diarrhea. But I thought it would be better for posterity to remember him as the great lover than as the big shit he always was." The great lover died of gonorrhea from all his meandering. I had such a laugh, honestly. So she changed his identity. In death, she changed it, gave him a little bit of gonorrhea. Oh, I think that is so funny. We have to change our identities, everybody. We've got to make our identities into our true selves. This is not your identity. Does anyone want to say anything? Because it's so important, all of this, and I want to do a meditation. It's getting late, and I want to do so many other things, but just tell me if anybody needs to say anything, or question anything, or comment about it. There must be something that's in your mind.
Can I just say that
Yes,
I think
yes.
that we're not supposed to have identity because that's like your ego. So
Yeah.
don't have ego because we should realize that we are part of the big oneness. We are not an ego person.
Exactly.
We're not an identity.
Exactly. We're not an identity, but how do you do that when you're going through poverty? When I see these people who absolutely going through the most terrible poverty, how do they say, well, that's not my identity? You see,
you are not actually going through it.
Well, some part of you is. But if you can see at that point that it's temporary, transient, that it's, yeah, it's really important, very, very important. Do you all see that? Do you all understand that? Okay. But I just want to say that also he calls something, he says your identity is pluralistic, okay? Sub-personalities, borderline personalities. And he goes on to say that people get borderline personality disorder when they cut off from what's happening with them at a particular time. He says, sometimes you can be very, very angry. Sometimes you can be very, very depressed. Sometimes you can be very, very whatever. But if our central sense of self, our core self, is not very strong, then in these borderline personality cases, they split off from the identity, okay? And then we jump from one position to another, often in response to an external stress thing or aggressive thing. We split off because we can't deal with it. Now, what is the essence of what he's saying here? He's saying that if we haven't got a basic nature, which is our awakened nature, if we haven't got a basic nature to go back to, then we can get carried away with the aggression, with this, with that, with the depression, with everything. He says when monks, he said, these great yogis, they can be a monk, they can be a yogi, they can be whatever they want to. But he says, when you look at Guru Rinpoche has millions of manifestations. He has 8 main manifestations. And then he has millions of manifestations. But he's always got the central core of who he is, which is a Buddha. He's a Buddha. We are a Buddha. That's our central core. I hope you can understand. Like, James Lowe gives all these examples. I haven't really got time to give them to you, but he says, like if you're a woman, okay, he says you can be a mother, a lover, a job you might have, you've got to clean your house, you've got to cook food, you've got a million different roles in your life. He says you come home from work, you're in a mood, your new partner says, let's have sex. He says, you don't feel like it because you're still in the office with your bad mood and you really don't feel like it, never mind doing anything else. So we're always going from one situation to another. But if we've got that core identity, which Guru Rinpoche has, and his core identity is always busy with enlightened activities. And so no matter what he is doing for the sake of all sentient beings, now he's being a wrathful deity. Now he's being a gentle monk of a deity. Now he's being this, according to whoever's there. But he's got his central identity. And if we know that, then all of our roles, all of our identities have a central feature. They all have that Buddha awakened nature. And this is so important for all of you to know. Don't you think that's an amazing idea? Do you? Because I think it's the most amazing idea, because when I'm in a panic about something or whatever I'm doing, I can actually go, well, let me come back to the relaxing into my Buddha nature. It really works. And let me see what have we got here. Instead of diving in with fixation and everything else. Luce, what do you think? Mimi, what do you think? Tell me. We go into one form, out of it, dissolve, back into another form, but we've always got that awakened nature. It's very, very important, because at death, what actually happens to us at death, and he writes about it, it's actually amazing when he writes about it. He says, let me get that page so I can do it nicely. He says, we are not who we think we are. Our nature and awareness is revealed when we drop our reliance on concepts. We are used to being ourselves, being Melanie, but we've only been in this identity for a short time. We've only been there for a short time as Melanie. He says, but in all our previous lives, we had different identities. And our enduring identity is as Padmasambhava, as a three-kaya guru. But the temporary identity confuses us. He says, the reason we need to move away from our identity as Melanie or Peter or whoever it is because this is not a good basis for your life. And he says, at death, because death will come and the mind will whirl off and go somewhere else. Okay, it'll go somewhere else when we die. He says, and unless you have an identity which can contain and direct this anxious self at the time of death, we'll be terrified. Now, you know, yesterday there was an article in the newspaper the day before I could talk, and it said there, like this Reva Steenkamp was that model that was murdered by Oscar Pistorius, you remember? So he murdered her and then he went to jail. And now this weekend or this week, her father died. So the big thing in the paper was, and now Mr. Steenkamp will be reunited with his beloved daughter. After all the stress and all the pain, he will be reunited with his beloved daughter. And I read this and I thought,
but it is the energies all come
the
together.
energy comes together. But if you think that your life is you and your daughter, you and your mommy, you
Or
and your
even just
husband, you, whatever, when you look at all of that, it's so confusing. Because if you go into death just waiting to meet that person, you will meet them for sure. You will meet them because that will be what you create. But they might already be in another incarnation far away doing something else. It'll just be your creation of your mind and your attachment. Because what you're saying is that inside your heart, they already are there. So someone you lost and someone you missed is already inside your heart. You don't have to worry about it. They're already there. Can you all understand that?
There's no you and there's no them.
There's no you and there's no them and there's no, and everything is one. So all of this is a mistaken identity. So tell me what you feel. If you can get this, then when the chips are down, you just change your identity, you change your view, you change your perception. You say, I need to go through this so that I can refine my identity. Let's do a quick meditation. And then you can ask me, because it's really important, this. It really, really is. I didn't move my everything into the shade because I thought that there was no sun today, and now the sun has come. If you want to open the door, be welcome. Yeah. So it's really, really important. So I was going to do a guru yoga from James Lowe, but it's quite a long one and the time is very short. So let's just do a meditation on identity. So come to this moment and breathe in and breathe out. And be in this moment. It's just a moment. Pure Dharmata, pure essence. All the other things are just carrying on and going on, but none of them have any reality. And when you're in this moment, actually feel the total relaxation of your body. Check it. If you're going through hard times and there's anxiety, allow it to dissolve. Anything you're feeling, anger, responsibility, all of the things that we feel, just allow them to dissolve. Everything to dissolve into complete emptiness. And right now, today, I want you to dissolve your identity. It doesn't mean that there's nothing. It means that your identity is not solid. It's not permanent. All the things that you're spending all your time indulging in and really, really working out, planning, conceptualizing, they're all going to change when the moment is right. So just let them be. Take all the things you are negotiating about in your life and just let them be. They'll all sort themselves out and come to this divine, permanent identity of your awakened nature right here and able to know everything and be in that state, relaxing, relaxing, relaxing the body, relaxing the speech, no speech, relaxing the mind, relaxing every single part of you. Nothing to attach to, nowhere to go, no place to be at, just right here in your awakened mind. if it comes up, let it just dissolve into pure spaciousness, pure emptiness. Whatever comes up has its activity and then dissolves into pure emptiness. That Guru Yoga I wanted to do is too long. So I can't do it with you. I'll do it another time. It's all in James Lowe's language, and I love his language. He puts it into everyday language, and then it's so easy to understand. Not all this highfalutin language I often use when we're doing it. So I just want to make, please, Mim.
Yeah, what James Lowe, I was reading something as well. What I loved is he said, you never separate from that pure essence. So in other words, you could say to yourself, I'm a fearful aspect of the ground. And then the ground will say to you, welcome.
Exactly what you've said. I'm a fearful aspect. I'm a sad aspect. I'm a whatever of the ground. I'm a this aspect. I'm a that aspect. And the ground will absorb you in. And then it'll all be finished in a moment. You know, it's so important for us to understand, but we can't. Our human minds just can't do it. I don't know why we're so insecure, so anxious, so uptight, you know. It's pathetic in lots of ways. And, you know, as you and I have discussed often, sometimes there's nothing you can really do about a situation that you're in because it's just not going to work for those particular people. You know, it's just not going to work because they're just not going to understand. And we live in a world that doesn't understand. That's why it's a dark, degenerative age. So we have to live with it and try and incorporate it in. And I find sometimes just a little humorous statement sometimes does the trick, you know, just something that makes somebody prick up in their ears without a whole lecture and a whole concept, you know. And I just want to give you 3 more things from James Lowe. The one is very, very interesting because I've got to find it though. I've got so many notes of his here, but I've got to find it, okay? But the one is, I've called it cutting and ending. I just want to see if it's in this lot, which is very, very interesting because he says that he used to live in the house of his guru and the guru's wife. He used to live with them. And he said, what is so interesting is, he says, we're so attached to everything. So the wife used to be annoyed with him. They fought a lot, which is nice to know, you know, that you're quite normal, that this guru and his wife, you know, fought quite a lot. So she'd come in. He spoke about it. He says, when they fought, she'd come and talk about it. And then he'd listen and say, leave it there. Just cut it. Okay. Now, you know, nothing gets more aggravating than you when someone says, leave it there, just cut it. And then he says, he says, leave it there, just cut it. Not, he said that, I said that, blah, 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 blah. He said, there's no end to it. We never get it. He says, if you indulge your emotions, you want to share them, but it's like drinking salt water. You get some relief from the thirst because of the water, but then the salt makes you more thirsty. There's more to say and more to do, and it never ends. Lasting happiness requires choosing to cut the chains, the tendrils of attachment, involvement, and identification. Now, that doesn't mean to say when you're really in a lousy situation, okay, it doesn't mean to say, like as he says, we could say, this is the movie, I'm watching the movie of my life. But unfortunately, we are the actors in our movie. So it's not so easy to separate yourself and cut it that easily. He says, but we've got to, you know, when you're going through a very difficult time, like you've lost someone, or you've lost your money, or you've got this, or you've got that, or you've got the other. It's really, really difficult. And we do need to feel the pain, the anger, the resentment, the depression. We need to feel it a lot, but we need to drop it eventually. Oh, we've all got such hectic load shedding and people are just dropping off. What can I do? But we need to feel the feeling of whatever situation we're going in, but don't attach to it. Don't hang on to it. Don't keep it all the time. And that's what the Guru was saying. Cut it. It's the end. Just cut it off. It's the end. And let it go, which is really, really important, okay? And I just want to do two more things, which is really important. One was this Karl Marx principle, which I think is really, really very interesting. And I'll tell you why. Just let me get to it. It's just one of the last things that I want to do. Page 209, but I can't remember where it is. Okay, he gives the principle of Karl Marx and what he did. And what happened with Karl Marx is like this. He says, in his concept of mystification, he said that one of the great things in this world is the way that people, now think about it in terms of South Africa, people who own the big factories can make the workers grateful to have a job. So they say to the worker, "You Johnny lucky you've got a job." It is as if the owner of the factory is doing the worker a favor, a great compassionate gesture, to give them a badly paid job. The worker never gets to feel that they're doing the boss a favor coming to work. Though the boss is making all the profit that the boss makes is always invisible to the worker because it doesn't enter into the domain of the worker. You just think about this. It's such an unbelievable thing. Doesn't enter into their domain. He says in the old days, a company would never publish its financial report and put a copy in the workers' tea room because they weren't allowed to see the profits. They were made to feel, you're so lucky you've got a job so you can eat and you can feed your family. Okay. And he says, now to apply this structure here, ignorance is the factory owner and the ego is the worker. And the ego thinks, oh, I need an identity. So he works very, very hard, but doesn't realize that every action it performs generates a profit of ignorance, and ignorance becomes more and more strong. The ego is just grateful that I'm a factory worker and I've got money and I'm very lucky to have this job. Now, when you look at that, it's so interesting because now there are trade unions. The trade unions are trying to tell the workers, don't tolerate this, don't do this, stand up and fight and come out and protest in the street. Don't do the work to make the bosses profit. Now, when you look at this, it's so interesting because honest to goodness, and then the unions go on strike. And they go in the street, and then in the end, if they're lucky, they might get a little pay rise. But you just look at it, that's what our ego is about, the ego of this identity. It's not a profitable thing, the ego. It's not profitable. We have to change that identity. Maybe we do have to fight for everything and what we really want, but we have to change that identity. We've got to become that Buddha nature so that we know where we're going in the world. So briefly, I mean, there's so much else I could give you, but briefly, this is kind of what I'm saying. And the most important point of all the blah, blah, blah that I've been giving you this morning is the fact that Tantra helps you to move out of yourself, to change your identity. That's what we started off with last time. Tantra comes from the word, we started off with that, ecstasy. And what is ecstasy? But ecstasis, which means a stepping out of yourself. A stepping out of yourself. It's jolly hard. It really, really is hard. But if you think you are, is just who you think you are is constructed from assumptions, from karma, from habitual tendencies. And so we move away from that by becoming the deity. And then when the chips are down, when we're going through, shame, okay, Nick, when we're going through the terrible things in our life, we just look at a different view. We look at a different situation, a different, no more I, me. These are the situations that I really, really need. Okay, I really need this. Before we end, does anyone want to say anything? Because we're going to leave when the chips are down and go on to another subject when I see you next in 2 weeks' time. But maybe somebody needs to say something. I'm happy to stay. But it's so important that you absorb this, because this is what we need when the chips are down. And we're all going through terrible things. Everybody's going through difficult things. You know, in South Africa, we're going through so many things at the moment. I mean, we're having pleasure, Karen, you know, we're having over 11 hours of load shedding. Okay. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous when you really think about it. But it's maybe the lights have gone out in us. Maybe as a people, the lights have gone out, and it's just symbolically indicated in all the darkness that there is. And now I saw there was mentioned today as well that the water in Johannesburg is very short and even though we've got full dams, it's very short, and that people should please not waste water or use a lot of water, so that we don't have to go through a waterless time. I mean, no, it's crazy. It's crazy. Honestly. So think about it, and let's really dedicate this to all the people. I mean, when I saw those Libyan floods, even worse than the earthquake in Morocco, when I saw those Libyan floods, when I heard this girl talking about those floods, she was standing there crying. And she said, in my whole life of reporting, I have never seen anything like this. She said, the dams bust, the storms came. She said, whole villages. She said, can you imagine a whole village with all its possessions, its cars, its children, its families were washed into the ocean. And now they need equipment to pull the bodies, the cars, everything out of the ocean. Thousands, like 12,000 people or something. Can you imagine? I just asked myself when I looked at that, what is this? What is going on? You know, water is energy in motion, emotion. Water is emotion. What have we done? We read about this in the Bible when Noah had to build an ark. Oh, is the ark actually an ark inside us to save us from these floods that we brought out with all our wrong emotion? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure, but I'm just telling you something that this girl who was reporting, she said, never in my life have I seen anything like it, that the water flattened the whole village and all its inhabitants. Children, babies, motor cars, animals, everything were just washed into the ocean. Imagine those people. But, you know, when I think of something like that, I also think, well, if you knew that everything was temporary, transient, maybe right then when it happened to you, you could just prepare yourself for what you had to do. That's the only thing we can do. let's dedicate for all these people and all of them. If we could just do the dedication, Deni, and thank you for doing it today. Through this merit, may we achieve all-seeing Buddhahood, and thereafter, once all harmful enemies have been defeated, may all beings be liberated from the ocean of existence. May they see that what is happening in the ocean of existence is just temporary, transient, a temporary drama, and they're stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. May they be liberated from that. Sonam die tampe zipane topne nepe dranam pamshene chegana chibala dropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho. Just end that. So listen.